Welcome back, everybody. We're diving into a case today that, it's a tough one. We're going back to January of 2007 in Fishkill, New York. It's the story of the Morey family.
Ah, the Morey family. Yeah.
Parents, Tony and Tina, and their three boys. Tony Jr., he was 13, Adam, 10 years old, and little Ryan, only 6. It starts as a house fire. Pretty normal, right? First responders show up expecting to, do what they do. But what they found,
It was awful.
it was way more than just a fire.
No, it turned into a straight-up nightmare once they got inside.
Yeah, a full-blown murder scene. So we're going to try to unpack it all for you guys today, starting with, those first terrifying moments at the scene. Can you imagine?
Oh, it's hard to even fathom. Think about it. You're trained to handle fires, right? But to walk into a home and find not just the aftermath of a fire, but evidence of a brutal, calculated attack, that's a whole other level.
Absolutely.
They thought they were responding to a fire,
Right.
but what they walked into, it was a scene straight out of a horror movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you mentioned finding, obvious signs of an attack. Can you paint a picture for our listener? What exactly did they find that was so out of place for, a typical house fire?
Well, as firefighters were battling the flames, they found the 3 Morey boys inside the house.
Inside, so they were still in their rooms or?
Yeah, it wasn't clear immediately if they had been trying to escape or, what the exact situation was, but they were definitely inside the house.
Okay, got it.
And it was clear that these boys had suffered violence that had nothing to do with the fire itself.
Okay, what kind of, I know you said trauma, but were there any, specific things that were immediately obvious?
Well, Tony Jr. and Adam, the 2 older boys, they had been stabbed.
Oh, my God.
Multiple times, which, tells you right there this wasn't just some random act. And then little Ryan, the youngest, the 6-year-old, he had suffered blunt force trauma to the head.
Oh, God, it's just so awful.
It really is. A scene no one should ever have to witness, especially in a place that's supposed to be safe, a family home. So, of course, with the boys found, the first thought is, where are the parents?
Right, exactly. Did one of the parents do this? Did they flee? Were they all taken by force? At that point, it's a complete mystery.
Total chaos. You've got a fire raging, 3 kids clearly murdered, and no sign of the parents. It was just a million questions and very few answers.
So this desperate search for Tony and Tina Morey begins. And then, to make things even more confusing, they found Tony's car.
Oh, yeah. Burned to a crisp. Near the house, though.
So what, was he trying to escape and it caught fire? Or did he set it himself?
Well, that was the big question, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was it staged to throw off the investigation? Or was Tony actually trying to get away? It was a puzzle, that's for sure.
A horrible, horrible puzzle. And the mystery just gets deeper when the autopsies come back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's when everything changes. So Tina's body, she was so badly burned, they initially thought she was fused to another body. Turns out it was Tony.
Wait, so both parents were in the house the whole time?
They were, and the autopsy showed they were both dead before the fire even started.
Wow. So this isn't a parent harming the kids and fleeing. This is full-on family annihilation.
Exactly. Someone wanted this entire family gone.
It's chilling.
Yeah.
And it's just the beginning of this whole twisted story.
Oh, yeah. The autopsies also showed that each family member was killed in a different way.
Really? So not just the fire and, what about the boys? We talked about that, but Tony and Tina.
Right. So Tony, he was shot once. Tina was shot twice.
Oh, my God.
So it's not just violence. It's planned.
Calculated.
Deliberate. This
Yeah.
is personal.
Yeah. This wasn't random at all. And with the whole family gone, that had to make the investigation so much harder, right?
Oh, for sure. No witnesses, no one to provide any insight into their lives, potential enemies, It was a blank slate.
Yeah.
Almost.
Almost.
But one thing stood out right away. No forced entry.
So they knew their killer.
It would seem that way. So investigators started looking at people the family knew, people who could have gotten in without a problem. And of course, knowing Tony's past with drugs, that was a huge focus.
Right. So we're not talking about just some regular family. This is a family with connections to, a potentially dangerous world. So that adds a whole other layer to it.
Absolutely. And it leads us to one of the first people who pops up on the radar, Charles Julio.
Julio. So from drug deals and violence, now we're looking at a friend.
Well, that's what's so unsettling about this whole case. Julio was a close friend of Tony's. Spent a lot of time at their house. They'd ride ATVs together, have barbecues. He knew the family, knew the house.
Okay, but what made him a suspect, though? Just being a friend isn't enough, right?
Right. Well, when investigators went to question him, he had a fresh cut on his forehead.
Oh, okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Did he have a good explanation for that?
He claimed it was from riding his ATV, an accident in the woods. But he also said he'd been wearing a helmet. So how'd he get a cut on his forehead?
Yeah, doesn't add up.
Plus, he claimed he'd been drinking at home with his friend, Mark Serrano, the night of the murders.
Ah, so now we have two potential suspects. Jaleo with a suspicious injury and a flimsy alibi, and Serrano, who's now the alibi witness.
Exactly. And initially, it seemed like their story might hold up. Serrano backed Jaleo up, said they were together, but things were about to take a turn. Remember Tony's drug involvement?
Yep.
Well, the guy who supplied Tony with cocaine, he got busted in a drug raid.
Oh, wow. So unrelated to the Morey case.
Totally unrelated. But it ended up being a huge break in the case. You see, this supplier, facing some serious time, he decided to make a deal. He sang like a canary, told the investigators everything he knew, hoping to get a lighter sentence. And what he told them, well, it changed everything. He told them that he'd seen both Jaleo and Serrano buying drugs from him the night the Moreys were murdered.
No way. So they were together that night.
Yep. And not just together, but buying drugs. Remember, this is the same night the Morey family is killed.
Right, right. So, that's huge. But it's still circumstantial, right?
Right.
Buying drugs doesn't automatically make them murderers.
You're absolutely right. It wasn't enough to convict them. But it gave investigators a solid lead. They had the who, now they needed the where. And that's where a little bit of technology came in.
Okay, you mentioned tech earlier. This is 2007, so we're not talking fancy facial recognition or those magic computers they have on CSI. What kind of tech are we talking about?
It might seem pretty basic now, but back then it was pretty cutting edge. A patrol car just doing its rounds happened to be near the Morey house around the time of the fire, and this car had a mobile license plate reader. So it basically scans and records the license plates of any car that passes by.
Okay, so imagine this. Tons of data, thousands of license plates, and somewhere in all of that, there's a possible clue. I bet it took forever to go through all of that.
It was a long shot. But remember, this was a huge case, a whole family wiped out. They had to try everything. And finally, after who knows how long, they got a hit.
What? They found something.
Yep. The license plate reader data showed that Serrano's car was near the Morey home the night of the murders.
No way. So now they have Jaleo with his suspicious injury and his bogus alibi. Serrano backs up that alibi, then a drug supplier puts them both buying drugs that same night, and now, boom, their car is near the crime scene.
The pieces were starting to fall into place, but they still needed something more concrete, something that definitively put them at the scene of the crime.
Physical evidence, like fingerprints, DNA, something like that.
Exactly. And that's where the investigation took another crazy turn. They searched a lake near Serrano's house.
A lake? Why a lake?
Well, it was a hunch, and it turned out to be a good one.
What did they find?
At the bottom of that lake, they found a knife.
Whoa.
Tony Morey's lockbox, a gun, and a pair of underwear with blood on them.
You have to be kidding me. Who dumps evidence in a lake? They really thought they could get away with that.
Right. You'd think they'd come up with a better plan. But yeah, they must panicked. And it was their undoing. The DNA testing showed that the blood on the underwear belonged to the Morey children.
Oh, God.
And the gun. It was a match to the murder weapon.
So they have the car near the scene, a witness putting them at a drug buy, and now they have physical evidence tying them to the murders, including the actual gun. What happened next?
Well, the police had enough to arrest Serrano. They brought him in, started questioning him, and he confessed to being at the Morey house that night.
He confessed.
He did. But of course, there's a catch.
There's always a catch.
He said he stayed in the car the whole time while Jaleo went inside.
Trying to downplay his role, I see.
Classic tactic, blame it on the other guy. But investigators weren't buying it.
Come on, he was there. He had to be more involved than just driving the car.
Exactly. And they had a plan to get the truth out of him. They knew Serrano was facing serious time.
Yeah. He was caught red-handed.
So they offered him a deal, testify against Jaleo, tell them what really happened inside that house, and they'd go easier on him.
Wow. Turning one friend against the other. That's cold.
It's a common strategy. And in this case, it worked. But the story wasn't over yet. Remember that drug supplier?
The one who ratted them out in the first place.
That's the one. Well, he was still hoping to get a lighter sentence, so he decided to tell the investigators one more thing.
What? There's more.
Oh, yeah. He said that Jaleo had called him before the news of the murders even broke. And what did he say? He said the Moreys were gone.
No. So he knew before anyone else.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
Which means his alibi was a complete lie. He was there.
Wow. I mean, that changes everything. It puts him at the scene, and it suggests he planned it.
Exactly. That one phone call sealed Jaleo's fate. They had Serrano ready to testify against him, and now this bombshell. The prosecution had an open and shut case.
I mean, it's hard to believe that they did all that just for money, you know? It just seems like there had to be something more going on.
Yeah, it does make you wonder. I mean, robbery was the main motive the prosecution presented. And yeah, Tony Morey's lockbox, the one with the cash and drugs, it was gone. They found it at the lake. But was it just about the money? Or was there something else? Some bad blood between them? Or maybe Jaleo was jealous of Tony, you know? He had a family, a nice house. Maybe Jaleo just snapped. Who knows?
We may never know the whole truth. But that's what's so scary about cases like this, you know? It just reminds you that you never really know what's going on in someone's head.
That's true. We try to understand, to find a reason, but sometimes there just isn't one, or at least not one that makes any sense to the rest of us.
And it's important to remember that this isn't just a story. I mean, these were real people. Tony and Tina, they're kids. They had lives, dreams. It's heartbreaking.
Absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in the details of a case, but we can't forget the victims. The Morey family deserves justice, and their memory deserves to be honored.
Well, they did get justice, right? I mean,
Oh.
both Galeo and Serrano were convicted.
They were. After a long trial, the jury found them both guilty. Serrano got 50 years to life.
50 years.
Yeah. But Jaleo, he got 5 consecutive life sentences. No parole.
Wow. So he'll never get out. I guess that's as close to justice as you can get in a case like this.
Right. But it doesn't bring the Morey family back.
No, it doesn't. This whole case, it's just a reminder of how precious life is and how important it is to cherish the people we love.
Well said. And I think it's also a testament to the hard work of the investigators, the prosecutors, everyone who fought to get justice for the Moreys.
Yeah. Even that patrol officer with the license plate reader, it's like all the pieces just came together.
It's amazing how sometimes even the smallest detail can make all the difference.
It's true. Well, this has been a heavy one, folks. But as always, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another case. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.